This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes at OVpodcast.com, find the blog at ObsessiveViewer.com, and subscribe to the subreddit at r/ObsessiveViewer. And if you want to help support the podcast, you can do that at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer, and you can also, of course, leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps out a ton. So, Tiny, how's it going, buddy?
Magnificently.
That is great to hear.
Yes.
It is freezing and yeah.
Soup's cold.
Soup's cold.
Yes.
Soup is usually hot. So today on the podcast, that was so dumb.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about rom-coms, of course, as teased in our last episode. But before that, there's some stuff that we need to go through. First of all, today we officially got the official word that October 14th will be Shocktober in Irvington 3.
Sweetness.
Yes, and we've actually reached the point where, I sent the email to the Irving Theater, and they're like, "Yep, I inked you in there last October. Looking forward to it."
Awesome.
So we basically have that Friday locked down for the foreseeable future.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's good. Anyway, I want to share this email from Yasmin, who I referenced in OV154. She's a longtime listener of the podcast. She's actually the one who recommended Letterboxd. So thank you for that, because that's freaking awesome.
It is.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I've added lists for. I don't remember if I mentioned this last episode, but I made lists of my entire DVD collection and my entire Blu-ray collection.
Right.
Yeah. Which I just added 2 new Blu-rays to it: Whiplash and Nightcrawler. So
awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of rare for me to buy physical media.
Yeah.
These days.
Me too.
So anyway, so I just want to briefly run through this listener email, because she took a lot of time to write it, and it was awesome to hear. To get. So here's the email from Yasmin. Dear Obsessive Viewer Podcast, I remember Mike saying a while ago on an episode that he hopes OV is someone's favorite podcast, and it should be obvious that it's my favorite. I checked out the podcast for the first time a few years ago after Matt tweeted me recommending Arrested Development, when I sent out a tweet about how Michael Cera can only play one role, and she put in parentheses, true. I doubt I would have watched the show out of my loathing for Michael Cera. I actually re-listened to some episodes years ago after I listened to all the eps that you'd released, around 10 to 15 episodes at that time, which I never do with podcasts. I guess it's because I don't know anyone in real life who loves film and TV as much as I do, so it's great hearing your guys' opinions and recommendations. For example, Boardwalk Empire. I'm not sure whether I'd have watched the show if I hadn't heard about it on the podcast. Also, thanks for recommending Sleep With Me podcast. I should probably stick to listening to that when I'm trying to fall asleep, as I've stayed up listening to OV151. And I'm embarrassed to say that I'd never read a Stephen King book until 2014, when I picked up Carrie after hearing Matt talking about King. Hope you guys continue the podcast for more years to come. Longtime listener, Yasmin. P.S. Thanks for all the completely useless information on Adam Sandler.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome, Yasmin.
We suffered through that. Just for you.
Yes. So I was just super jazzed about that email, because she's one of our more outspoken listeners who contacts us via Twitter and
Facebook,
Instagram, and Letterboxd, the thing that she recommended us get.
Yeah.
So, but it was just really nice to hear that, and we hope that we don't disappoint you or any of our listeners in the future. And we encourage everyone to email us. You know where to email us. It's in the show notes, all that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, having said that, should we do a brief rundown of some news items real quick?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we're recording this a handful of days after the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think of the trailers that came out? I have a list of 6 here that we can run down really quickly throughout them, because a lot of them are ones that, a few of them are ones that I talked about with Fecus in our bonus episode about trailers recently.
Uh-huh.
So first up, Gods of Egypt. What do you think of that? Because it comes out in a couple weeks, and Yeah.
I could not be less interested in it.
Right.
It's just weird. It looks like more of the swords and sandals stuff that's really died out about a decade ago. Gladiator kind of kicked it off, and I'm kind of sick of the genre, really. So more whitewashing of stuff again, which is it's just so egregious anymore.
Shameless and just
it's pretty bad.
It's directed by Alex Proyas, who directed Dark City and The Crow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I mean, those both are aesthetically pleasing, but I wasn't too crazy about The Crow, so
this does not look to be in his wheelhouse, really.
Not so much.
Weird. Everybody needs a paycheck, I guess.
Yeah, and it might be because of the 300 This Is Sparta meme and everything, but I just can't get excited about seeing Gerard Butler in that role in a Sword and Sandals movie.
Yeah, me either.
At all.
Yeah. I don't really have a problem with Gerard Butler, but I don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he's going to be in the sequel to Olympus Has Fallen, London Has Fallen, here in a couple weeks. And that looks like just kind of a garbage, throwaway action movie.
Yeah.
Which the first one was kind of a nice, at points, kind of a nice throwback to
kind of fun.
Yeah, kind of like 90s, that 90s era of action movie that was very prevalent in the 90s.
Yeah.
But this one, in the trailer for this one, for London Has Fallen, has the line at the beginning of the trailer that makes me kind of want to see it, where Gerard Butler's running with the president, for a jog with Secret Service all around and everything.
Yeah.
And then Gerard Butler turns to the president, played by Aaron Eckhart, I think, and says, "This is a heck of a presidential run." So,
oh my god!
All right, he might have said presidential race, but
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to see it now. But,
yeah, I'm gonna see it at some point, but not in the theater.
Yeah, well, I will. I'll make you review it for the podcast.
Nice.
So we're running long with all this. Let's just run through some of these other ones. Really, the only one that I want to talk about is the third one on the list. But let's save that for last and just talk about briefly each one of the next ones. 10 Cloverfield Lane. Have we talked about this at all?
Not much, I don't think, at all on the podcast. No.
Yeah, it's man, I'm excited for it.
I really am too.
Mm-hmm.
I will see that in the theater.
Yep. Oh yeah,
that's gonna be great.
Yeah, that, and then Independence Day Resurgence is a movie that me and Feckus talked about. What's your take on it?
We always knew they'd come back. Yeah, the first movie is just so much fun. Mm-hmm. It is kind of over the top and silly, but just in such a well done way.
Right.
You care about the characters and everything, and so I think they're going to be able to carry that into a sequel. Mm-hmm. It's been a while. There's a very good chance it could suck.
Right.
But I have high hopes for it.
Yeah, it'll be fun summer popcorn.
Yeah.
Then Captain America: Civil War looks, great.
Yes, it does. I really like the Super Bowl spot.
Really?
The 30-second trailer.
Right.
Because it showed so much more. Mm-hmm. Kind of showed you all the characters.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
The lineup of it. I love the hashtags during the credits. I guess credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the big one I want to talk about, Tiny, The Secret Lives of Pets.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I love this concept for a movie, and it looks like it's going to be charming as hell. So
totally,
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
And then finally, his name, Tiny. It's Jason Bourne, the movie.
Oh yeah, Jason Bourne. Yeah.
Did you see this trailer?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. What's your take on it? Because it's the fifth Bourne movie. Matt Damon's back.
Yeah, I really love this series. I own the trilogy on Blu-ray and DVD, and it's one of those things I rewatch every year.
Nice.
I love the original trilogy. It's awesome. And so it looks to be in the same vein level of quality as those movies. So as long as it maintains that quality, I am all for it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. It's it's funny. The whole trailer is very dark, like dimly lit, very dark and nighttime
filtered
shots. Yeah, and it's funny. Someone tweeted. Someone on Twitter said something to the effect of, it's like Paul Greengrass watched the entire Fast and Furious franchise and then decided to make Bourne 5.
That's funny.
But yeah, and there's a great YouTube clip that I might actually tack it on to here, but it's just like a 10 or 15 second spot or whatever that's just it's a bit of the trailer saying like his name, and then it shows Matt Damon, and then instead of showing Jason Bourne, they just have the audio from Team America saying, Matt Damon.
Love it.
So great.
Speaking of funny stuff in movies and the Super Bowl, there was a really funny meme that made its way around the internet of the part in Forrest Gump where Forrest Gump goes to the Black Panther meeting.
Okay.
And but what it is, the meme is Peyton Manning's face superimposed over Forrest Gump's, and it just says, sorry I ruined your Super Bowl Panther party. Because they played the Panthers.
That's ridiculous.
It's so funny. And it's like a really good edit or whatever.
Nice. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to Jason Bourne as well. It looks like anything after the Bourne Legacy is hopefully going to be a step up. I wasn't a fan of that movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so then finally, to wrap up this news segment, I just want to talk really quickly about the news that broke, I think as of this recording, it broke like yesterday or the day before. Bryan Fuller, the showrunner of Hannibal, which I'll talk about in Potpourri, and Pushing Daisies and some other stuff, I'm sure. He was named the showrunner for CBS's new Star Trek series that's going to come out next year.
Nice.
Which, after seeing about 10 episodes of Hannibal, I am super excited for this.
Cool.
Because that dude, he did very well with that property. And apparently he's a huge Trekkie.
Nice.
I think he actually got his start writing for like Deep Space Nine or Voyager or something.
Okay.
So, and like he has an encyclopedic knowledge of it. The only thing, Tiny, about this is that it's not going to be airing on CBS. It's going to be on CBS's All Access digital streaming service, which
that's weak.
It is. It has me nervous. Apparently, from my research, it's $5.99 a month, which that's not a problem for me because from my thinking is wait for the season to air or be loaded, pay the $5.99. You basically have access to Star Trek for a month to watch it, and then it's $6 for a season. It's not that big of a deal,
right?
But the thing is, this reminds me quite a bit of Community going to Yahoo Screen.
Yeah. Which,
granted, Star Trek is a much bigger property.
Yeah.
And CBS probably has more money to throw at it than Yahoo had for Community. But still, it makes me uneasy to think that CBS, a major network, is going to resurrect or I guess resurrect is the right word, bring back this 50-year-old franchise back to television for the first time in a long time, and then just put it on this digital streaming package service that's already in a world where we're already pretty much diluted with or oversaturated with different streaming services. It's I don't know. It makes me uneasy, but Bryan Fuller being attached to it gives me a lot more confidence.
Yeah, it's weird. It's such a valuable property. They would stick it on their own untested digital streaming service.
Right.
Like if they, I don't know. I guess if someone was bringing it back on Netflix or Hulu, it would make more sense. But
right,
just on CBS's digital streaming service, like what they have a digital streaming service. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So that does not inspire confidence.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, who knows? We'll check back in like a year or so.
Yeah.
So that does it for our news segment this week. Our new news segment because it's the second time doing it. So Tiny, today we're doing something that we haven't done. I've been wanting to do this for like close to 3 years now.
It is on at the Rom-Com Con.
Oh my god.
Yeah. We've been talking about doing a rom-com episode for a long time.
Yes. Every second or third week of February, or I can't count. Second week of February. I've wanted to do a rom-com episode that coincides with Valentine's Day, and we're finally doing it.
Finally.
Yeah. So I mean, this is such a big genre.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since we've done a topic episode like this, so bear with us here. Romantic comedies. This is a very broad topic, incredibly broad. And what we're doing here is we have a master list of several movies, divided up into a few different categories. For it, like we have a very short list of classics that we're going to touch on for a second, and then we're going to go into more formulaic entries in the rom-com genre, and then we'll end it with some fresh takes or unique spins on the genre. So that's basically our rundown for it. But before we get to that, I kind of want to talk about the romantic comedy as a property, as a genre, and how we feel about it. I, for one, am a very outspoken supporter of the rom-com genre. Although apparently I have a history of telling like dates that I don't like them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't. It's weird because it's not like I'm very self-conscious about it, but it's like I've subconsciously told like women I've been out with, like, not subconsciously, but like just kind of saying like, yeah, and like downplayed it because I don't want to scare them away. I find other ways to do that.
Right.
But I'm just such. There's something about the romantic comedy that I just love. It's hard to put my finger on. It's kind of the reason why I loved How I Met Your Mother, because it felt like a complete 22-minute romantic comedy movie most weeks. And in theory, it was supposed to be a one giant romantic comedy, but they kind of fumbled it at the end there.
Yeah.
But for movies, it's something that this is probably the most, I want to say approachable, or the most playable kind of movie. It's kind of a good background. A good rom-com is a good background movie. There's some that aren't that great, but it's always like, even if it's following the standard rom-com formula, it's still somewhat pleasant. You can find pleasure in it.
Oh, yeah.
Here and there. So Tiny, how do you feel about rom-coms?
I'm a big fan as well.
Nice.
Unabashedly, I don't think there's anything wrong with loving rom-coms, because I think part of the reason why it's kind of stigmatized is because, as we will mention, there's a lot of formulaic movies that come out from this genre, and I think that's kind of just a symptom of success, really. I think that just kind of, when any kind of genre or style becomes successful, you get a saturation of it, and that leads to quality issues. So I can understand why people would have some qualms about this genre, but there's so much good stuff, or there's at the very least, there's a ton of gems within the genre that I don't think we really need to be embarrassed about the fact that we like it, because it's funny stuff. It's quality writing. It's good acting. It's good stories. Like, I don't think we need to have a stigma or complex about it.
Yeah, even the most trite or formulaic or rote romantic comedy, even those they can be saved by good chemistry between the main actors.
Very true.
In the movie, it's like if you've, and it's kind of what makes rom-coms a little unique, is that they're almost dependent on the chemistry of the romantic leads, rather than sometimes rather than the material itself. So it's kind of unique in that sense, and I mean, when you have good chemistry along with good writing and good direction and a fresh take on it, it can be magical. Like, one of these movies I don't do like top 10 lists or anything. I actually, slight tangent, I'm thinking that when I eventually, and this is way down the line, when I eventually go through my entire backlog of my journals for movie watching, and add it all to Letterboxd, I might I might use that data and compile like an actual top 10 favorite movies list out of everything, because basically they'd have to all be there, because if I have a top 10 list of my favorite movies of all time, there's no way that I'm not going to have watched them in the last 5 years.
Yeah, true.
So
true.
But yeah, But having said that, like, there's one movie on this list in particular that is would without question be on it. It's one of my favorite movies. So yeah, so rom-coms. We're here to.
I wonder what it is about the genre that's appealing to us.
I'm a hopeless romantic, Tiny.
I love love, Matt.
Right.
I love love. Okay, and I love to laugh. But no, I mean that sounds cheesy as hell. But it's I think everyone's looking for companionship in some respect, and it's relatable. It's just relatable. Most people have had silly dating mishaps, or they've had really deep heartbreaks and stuff like that. It's a relatable subject.
My life is a rom-com, Tiny.
Is it? Who does the score?
Not me.
Oh God.
I'm gonna make a note of the time on there because I might need to cut that out.
No, you should leave it in.
I probably will.
That's beautiful. Oh man.
Anyways, so let's go. Let's talk about some classics. Really,
let's do it.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, so I have a list of 4 classics here. It's worth a caveat that I haven't had a chance to. I've never watched Pretty Woman.
Me either.
Which is a classic in its own right. So it's omitted from this list, shamefully. If you want to berate us about our exclusion of it, yes,
shameful.
Please email us about that. But but yeah, but we have 4 classics here, and I'll just run through them really quickly, and then we can talk about them. We can talk about these point by point, really, but I'll just run through them really quickly for the listeners. Annie Hall, When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, and Notting Hill.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with Annie Hall. You've seen this, right?
Yeah, I have it on DVD.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I need to buy it too. I've talked about this before because I think last year or a while ago, Mike, our co-host who's on sabbatical from the podcast, he watched it for the first time. And while I'm not too familiar with Woody Allen's work overall, and he has a lot of work to get through.
Yeah.
I've heard really good things about Midnight in Paris. I really need to see that. But Annie Hall is just it speaks to me as. Because from the outset, you have Woody Allen just speaking to the audience, saying that, just talking about how he and Annie broke up and how he's going through, like, it's basically him talking, it's him soliloquizing. I don't know if that's a word.
It is now. I like it.
It is, yeah. He soliloquizes all over us that he's going through a breakup and recounting the. I don't know where that came from. He's talking about the breakup and how he basically spewing out his neuroses at the audience, and it's one of those scenes that I think is a great opening scene to a movie.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing. I remember the first time I saw this movie. Actually, I think I rented it from Google Play. It was like a few years ago, actually. And I remember like seeing that. This is the first I'd seen. This may have been the first Woody Allen movie I'd ever seen either, or as well. But I remember seeing that scene, and then once it ended, I remember like before it even went to the movie, I rewound it and played it again because it was I was just so impressed by it. And the movie itself, it's charming. It's and it's really good. It's been a couple years since I've seen it, so I don't really have a fresh take on it. But I came away from it just really appreciating it as a pillar of the romantic comedy genre. What do you think of it?
Agreed. I think the scene you're talking about is indicative of why it's such a quality movie and why people like it so much. It's just. The level of candor from the lead character is kind of unprecedented. I mean, it's like you're having a conversation with your buddy after a breakup.
Right.
And again, so many people can just relate to that, and so many people have been there and know what it's like that you're automatically interested. Everyone wants to know, who's dating who and who just broke up. It's juicy gossip, but it's intriguing and that scene. And really, this whole movie has that feel to it. It has a high level of candor and inclusiveness that really speaks to the audience. And and it's just funny. I mean, it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
funny movie. The part where they're trying to cook the lobsters,
Right,
it's
iconic.
just a classic. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
it's an iconic
Oh, yeah.
scene, and it's I think that's one of those things that I think when people think of like an ideal level of comfort and an ideal relationship to have with someone, you kind of think of a situation like that where
Right.
things are going horribly, but you're laughing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a really great scene. It's a
Hall's
classic
great.
for a reason.
Yeah, I need to revisit it. I need to own it. And everything. The next on the list, also worth mentioning, Annie Hall is not the. I'll go through probably not each one, but I'll say that Annie Hall is not the one that is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
So the next one is When Harry Met Sally, which I just recently. This is one that I was able to rewatch recently, and man, just this movie. Like, I remember seeing it for the first time a long time ago and not really being too crazy about it. And I've seen it, like, this is probably my third or fourth time overall seeing it over the course of the last probably 7-8 years. And every time I see it, it just grows on me more and more. And the chemistry between Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan is just so it's really, really charming and just great. And I feel like the word charming is going to come up a lot in this, because that's kind of a big part of the romantic comedy. But just, it takes such a great concept. It's this concept that men and women can't be friends without sex being involved or relationship-y stuff getting involved. And it's such a plain, pretty much universal topic. And it doesn't necessarily deconstruct it, but it pits its characters into this world where this rule resides, and it's just seeing them growing closer together, and it's just a really well made movie. And then, of course, I mean, it's worth mentioning that seeing Meg Ryan in this recently, it's like, this is the most charming woman I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like, she's freaking adorable, and she plays the part so incredibly well.
Yeah, she's like idyllic in this movie. Yeah, and I agree. I love When Harry Met Sally. Probably my favorite of the classics we're mentioning is
Nice.
When Harry Met Sally. I've been a big fan of this movie since I was a kid. I remember seeing this when I was too young, because the iconic scene where she does the fake orgasm in the restaurant. I was like 8 or 9. I was like, what's happening? I just had no idea what was going on, 'cause
Right.
I didn't know what that was. But years later, it's even funnier to me, because I just picture 8-year-old me having no idea what's happening, and it's just even funnier to me. So it's just kind of personal, I guess. My relationship to the movie. I've been a huge Billy Crystal fan. Again, probably earlier than I should have, given the level of maturity in his comedy. I loved him as a kid, and I remember a couple years ago he did an HBO special about his father passing away.
Right.
And it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. Like, it brought me to tears, and I laughed my ass off at the same time.
Nice.
He's just a wildly talented man, and just hilarious. So I think they tapped into his talent in that movie wonderfully. He's charming as well as Meg Ryan, so it's just an awesome movie.
Nice. Yeah, I of course I agree with all of that.
And to your point again, perfect chemistry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then we have this one I haven't seen in a long time, and we can probably double this up with. I don't know if it's if the not sequel, but if its counterpart is really classic worthy. But Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail.
Okay.
Sleepless in Seattle, I remember my memory of this movie. I haven't seen it for a few years now, but I remember growing up. I remember it being like my mom's favorite movie, and I feel like that's something that people will be able to relate to, because I feel like romantic comedies romantic comedies. One of them is always someone's mom's favorite movie.
Yeah, usually.
That's like the tagline for the genre. And Sleepless in Seattle was my mom's favorite movie.
Yeah.
Growing up. And I just remember. I mean, I don't remember much about it from seeing it, but I do remember like iconic scenes from it. The scene on the Empire State Building. It's just the chemistry between, again, Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is he's magnificent in everything. So, have you seen it recently? Do you have a fresher take on it than I do?
I really don't. For some reason, this movie and I never connected.
Really?
And it's not because I have criticisms of it or I thought it was a bad movie. I don't know. I think I was just never in the right place whenever I saw it. I think I've seen it like twice, and neither time did it really grip me. But again, I'm not trying to take anything away from it. I really just need to see it again as an adult and everything. Same thing with You've Got Mail. That one, I think I'm a little critical of. I saw that one for the first time. I actually mentioned it on the podcast.
Yeah.
The format in which I watched it was less than ideal.
Right, it was on TV.
It was on TV, like with commercials, and it was with I was with family and stuff, so... But I wasn't as crazy about You've Got Mail. I really just need to see both again.
Right.
To really have a solid opinion on them.
Yeah, You've Got Mail, I watched it fairly recently too. It's not as great as my memory of Sleepless in Seattle by any stretch, but and it doesn't have as like iconic sequences from it or anything, but I do like it as a depiction of a big business taking over small business, because the movie's about Meg Ryan being a small bookstore owner and Tom Hanks being the head of a major corporation that's going to try to buy them out. And so it has some really good stuff to say about that. I would kind of be, I don't know, I'm spitballing here, but it would be interesting to see a third pairing between Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Yeah, that's like them, like I don't know, meeting on Tinder, swapping nudes on Snapchat or something. Just something to show the evolution of the technology, because Sleepless in Seattle was radio, You've Got Mail's email, and then now this generation has Snapchat and Tinder and swiping right. Yeah. So we can move on to the last one in our classics section is Notting Hill, which I just recently watched last night for the first time. It was a disappointment to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's very well regarded. I couldn't get past the from the beginning. I couldn't really get past the there's a bit on Family Guy where it's like a cutaway gag in one of the early seasons where Brian says something to the effect of, "Remember that time you went to the movies and Peter got jealous?" And it just shows them at at a movie starring Hugh Grant called "What's My Appeal?" and it just shows Hugh Grant on the screen saying, like, stuttering and being like, "Well, I don't know. I'd like to say something, but I just find myself so charmingly befuddled." And that's what was in the back of my head the whole movie. But I don't know. It's not that Notting Hill didn't have chemistry, because there was some really good chemistry between Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant plays a kind of just normal guy who by chance meets a movie star played by Julia Roberts, and they kind of start a romantic relationship. Didn't really buy the relationship though. Really? Yeah, there's a bit of a twist partway through. First of all, it also took like 45 minutes of them meeting and building up the relationship, which it was kind of, I don't know, it was a little meandering. Like, it was kind of like, I was kind of buying it and going with it and everything, but once there's a turn in the plot, when there's a reveal about Julia Roberts, it's like, okay, that's all right, tough breaks. That's a tough break, Hugh, but move on. And then it just kind of, the movie just kind of continued on and did the standard romantic comedy thing, but I went ahead and still put it under classics because it's well regarded despite my disappointment. Tiny, what did you think of Notting Hill?
I understand why you put it on the classics list. It makes sense because it is just well regarded, and right. I think it's mentioned amongst classics. So right. I saw this like when it came out, which was like what, 97.
I think 99.
99. So I was 12. It was over my head, and I really just didn't. I really didn't get it, and I honestly do not remember it at all.
Really?
So I basically haven't seen it. Yeah.
There's a really great segment where basically Julia Roberts has met Hugh Grant, and they share a kiss, and then she basically orchestrates it to where he gets invited up to her hotel, but unbeknownst to him, it's a press junket for a movie she's in. So he has to he lies and says, "Yeah, my name's William. Whatever. I'm with." And then he looks at a magazine on the counter, and it's a horse magazine. It's like, "I'm from Horse and Hound." And so it's like this really elevated it. Like, this was my favorite part of the entire movie, is that he has his meeting with Julia Roberts, and then as he's about to leave, he gets taken into the press junket. Like, he has to interview the actors for the movie and everything. And it's a space movie, and like there was one scene where he's like he's so charmingly befuddled that at one point he keeps asking if there's horses in it, and if there's horses in their next movie. And
that sounds funny
because it's Horse and Hound. But
right.
But yeah, so I liked that. But the movie itself, I was just not too keen on.
Gotcha.
So, those are the classics that we have. That's kind of a good jumping off point to get to the more formulaic movies on the list. And we don't really need to talk about every single one of these, but because we have a list of 12 on here. Mm-hmm. And that's just me off the top of my head.
Right.
Like, there are several movies. There's a whole string of... we could probably do a sequel to this episode that's just teen rom-coms.
Yeah.
That's actually... I'm going to write that down. That's actually going to be an idea for next year. I'm not kidding. I'm writing it down right now. 90s teen rom-coms even. So anyway, but yeah, these are kind of the tropish movies. I've seen, not embarrassed to say, I've seen all of them except for one, I think, but I'll just run through the list and we can talk one by one through these. These are the formulaic, these are kind of the middle ground of romantic comedies.
Yeah.
With one noticeable, like, horrible one by my count. I don't know if you've seen it, but first one is Failure to Launch, which has Matthew McConaughey.
Yep.
And Sarah Jessica Parker.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched this movie for the first time like a year and a half ago, I think. Mm-hmm. And I may have brought it up on the podcast. I don't remember, but this might be the most romantic comedy because it follows every cliche.
It does.
It's like it's unreal to me.
Yeah.
Great supporting cast though. There's Zooey Deschanel. There's Justin Bartha.
Justin Bartha's great in this.
Yeah, like that's one thing that can be said about not Failure to Launch, but the rom-com genre, which I'm convinced I'm going to fumble those words at some point in this podcast. Rom-com genre. But there's a lot of, like, I don't want to say that it's a good starting point for a lot of people, but it's if you go back, there's a lot of small parts for people that have big roles or take big have big careers afterwards.
Yeah, it's kind of like the horror of comedy.
A little bit,
because a lot of actors get their start in horror movies.
Yeah,
a lot of comics or comedic actors get their start in rom-coms.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm sticking to it. I'm claiming that.
Yeah.
But you're right. Failure to Launch is like you could plug it into a computer. That's how formulaic it is.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of fun to watch.
It is, yeah.
Like, by no means is it like a really good movie or anything, but it's just one of those things like, oh, I bet this is going to be the point where there's diversity in their relationship. Oh, and sure enough, there it is.
It's a good background movie. All of these are good background movies, except for one that I hate with a passion. But,
okay.
But yeah, so yeah, that's Failure to Launch. Not really much stands out about it. I think a bird dies in it, but okay, so next one, I just remembered that there was one that is kind of a contemporary of it, or really just a movie that I saw at the same time I saw this movie.
Okay.
But there's 27 Dresses and Maid of Honor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about each one in particular. We could probably done. I think 27 Dresses, was that Katherine Heigl?
It was. Was Katherine Heigl a Maid of Honor?
No. I don't think so. I don't remember who the female lead was in that, but both surrounding weddings, romantic comedies, all that stuff. Also, yeah, it's a loose connection, but Maid of Honor had Patrick
Dempsey.
Patrick Dempsey, McDreamy from that one
Was it
show.
J-Lo?
No, but anyway,
there's only like 5 actresses,
right? Like total in the world,
yeah, that could be in the movie,
right? But let's talk about 27 Dresses first, because it's we'll go point by point. I'm sorry, everyone. Okay, so 27 Dresses. I'm looking at the IMDb page, and I don't remember much about it. I just remember thinking like this is a rote rom-com,
right?
Kind of just going through the paces. It's about a woman who is bridesmaid 27 times, and after serving as a bridesmaid 27 times, a young woman wrestles with the idea of standing by her sister's side as her sibling marries the man she's secretly in love with. Don't really, like I said, I don't really remember much about it, but it's Katherine Heigl in a rom-com.
Yeah.
What
is James Marsden in this?
Yeah, he was the lead, the co-lead.
Okay, I remember there's a scene where they're at a bar. That's actually a decent scene, but
okay.
Yeah, for the most part, I don't remember a lot of this movie, and it's kind of, a lot of rom-coms will have this like this certain aspect of like diversity that makes it that the writer thinks they're setting themselves apart from other rom-coms.
Right.
Like in Failure to Launch, it's Matthew McConaughey's never moved out from
diversity or adversity.
Adversity.
Adversity
Okay. Is what I meant.
Yeah.
But Matthew McConaughey's never moved out from his parents' home, even though he's in his late 30s. And
right.
27 Dresses. She's been a bridesmaid 27 times, and you'll see like in these formulaic ones, there's just like one little thing they think it's kind of different, and it sets it apart. I guess in a way it does, but it's just kind of this weird aspect of the genre, I guess.
Right, but then I don't know. Well, some of them, I don't think that many of them really work that way, because Maid of Honor is a male maid of honor who's in love with the bride, I believe, and then the wedding planner revolves around a wedding planner. Let's just run through a lot of these.
Yeah.
We're all over the place. These are all formulaic rom-coms.
Yeah.
The one that I want to touch on that is really terrible, that I haven't seen it for a couple years, and I wanted to pitch this to you as something to do this month, but I can't bring myself to do it. But it's Leap Year.
Okay, I never saw this.
It's really bad. It's got Matthew Good in it as the male lead, and he's a good actor.
Yeah.
But it also has Amy Adams, who she's great. Yeah. But it's like the movie just did not work for me. It's I'm gonna jumble this. Okay, Anna Brady plans to travel to Dublin, Ireland, to propose marriage to her boyfriend Jeremy on Leap Day because, according to Irish tradition, a man who receives a marriage proposal on a Leap Day must accept it.
Wow!
Like that setup, that plot outline, that premise is so not good.
So flimsy.
So flimsy, and so it almost goes against it almost goes against the rom-com genre, like the rules of the genre, without the self-awareness to be able to be appreciated in some way. Because it's like oh, Irish tradition is, I'm going to propose to this guy so that he must accept because of this Irish tradition on Leap Day. And it's like, that conceit itself, it's like, is that really a marriage you want to have?
No kidding.
Like, really?
That's weird.
It's also worth mentioning that Adam Scott is in that movie, and that bums me out quite a bit. But I wanted to pitch to you that we should, since this month is the first leap year of the Obsessive Viewer podcast, we should review that movie, and then in 4 years review the movie again, and then in 4 years review the movie again. So every Leap Day we release a new.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
That's
It's dumb.
No.
It's almost as smart as the movie Leap Year. And I also struggled with that idea because I vowed I would never see that movie again because it was bad. I don't remember the specifics of the ending, like what happened, but I just remember. It's a standard rom-com, so you know that the ending is they're gonna end up together or whatever. But I remember thinking, having a violent reaction to it, thinking like, there's no way that they should end up they don't. That doesn't work. That's not how it works, guys. Like, these two people should not be together.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I want to kind of skip ahead on this list here and talk about Hitch.
Okay. Which
I feel kind of bad. Well, I don't know if I feel bad for it. For putting it under Formulaic, because it's a movie that I liked quite a bit when it came out.
Me too.
Actually, and I think I own it.
I know you do because I borrowed it from you.
Yeah, I definitely own it. Check out my list on Letterboxd of my DVDs. Anyway, it's got Will Smith. He's one of the most charismatic guys. Kevin James before he became Kevin James, the movie star, obnoxious actor guy.
Right.
And it plays with the formula of the rom-com in a somewhat unique way. So much so that it should probably go in the next category. But I don't know, something about it just didn't. It strained believability for me upon rewatch, and it kind of plays with some tropes and some goofy aspects to it. But I appreciate the idea of the conceit of the movie being that Will Smith is a guy who whose job is to help men get women, or overcome their own personal crap to get the women of their dreams. And dealing with him not being able to work his magic on a girl that he wants to date. How do you feel about Hitch?
I think it's a fun premise. I mean, it's just it is different. I think you're right. It could almost be in the next category, the fresh takes category. A big helping part of it is the fact that Will Smith is in it. And like you said, he's hugely charismatic.
Right.
But yeah, I think it sets itself apart because it's not really. I think those kinds of movies where like the premise is you have someone who has this ridiculous job that couldn't possibly exist. Like there's no guy out there who helps. This just doesn't exist.
Believe me, I know.
It's like the new movie, The Wedding Ringer. Like there's no guy who has a business where he's a best
dumb
man.
Premise.
It's so stupid. I saw the movie. It's not good. It's not funny either. It's terrible. So it tends to be a hindrance on movies when you have something like that, but it just kind of worked in this movie. And I think you can give credit to Will Smith and maybe the writers. And plus the supporting characters were really strong. It had a good subplot and sub characters who really moved it along. So,
and it also did play a good balancing act between Kevin James's story with, I can't remember the actress who played his love interest in it, but him kind of trying to get the woman of his dreams, who's this way out of his league, way rich woman who's unobtainable to him, while also juggling the plot line with Will Smith, trying to get was it Eva Mendes?
Eva
Mendes, yeah. And failing spectacularly.
I think it was Radha Mitchell. Was she?
Maybe. I don't think it was her.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so it has that going for it, but it also has a lot of the tropey stuff. It has Hitch doing the always hilarious and not at all overdone, oh my god, I'm allergic to this, or oh my god, like in the movie he's allergic to food that he doesn't realize he's eating what he's allergic to.
Stupid.
But it's also, that's a common thing, like, oh, I've eaten something that I shouldn't have. Now I have something that's wrong with me that's going to propel us into a comedic farce. Yeah, so it's got, and also the, what was it, the jet ski thing where he accidentally hits her in the face?
Yeah.
It's like, so it plays with some kind of common tropey kind of setups or situations that you see in lesser, more formulaic movies, and that's a hindrance to it. But it does do the juggling act between those two plot lines really well.
True.
And then also there's one scene with I think it was Jeffrey Donovan, the actor. He makes an appearance as the guy who wants to he solicits Hitch's talents to get a woman specifically so that he can sleep with her, and that's it.
Right.
And then there's just a great Will Smith scene where he just knocks him out, or he messes up, like he hits him basically, and then he calls him Pumpkin. I can't remember the specifics of the scene, but that was my favorite part of the movie. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a shaky formulaic entry in this thing, in this segment. So there's a couple other. Okay, well, first of all, the proposal. Have you seen that?
I have, yes.
Me too. Sandra Bullock and
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. We don't really need to talk that much about it. I remember there was a scene where Ryan Reynolds has headphones in or earbuds in, and he takes off his. I think he's like wearing a hoodie, and this is such a weird take from it.
It is. Where are you going with this, man?
He like takes off his hoodie or takes off his shirt or something while wearing earbuds and maneuvering his phone or whatever while having a conversation. I'm like, that's pure talent. That's because I can't do that without like knocking my headphones out and
right.
And yeah, so yeah, that's my main takeaway from the proposal. But
wow.
No, it's another kind of formulaic rom-com. Which I probably should have gone through Katherine Heigl and Sandra Bullock's careers to mine for examples of this.
Yeah.
For this segment. But what did you think of the proposal?
You know, it was okay. I think it kind of had, like I said, there's kind of something that sets these apart. They try to set each other apart, and it's like, you know, there's like this whole forced marriage kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a funny situation for comedy.
Yeah.
This is also part of the kind of like the year of Betty White, if you will.
Sure.
She was in that Super Bowl commercial that was really popular, and then she was relatively funny in this movie, and I think she was on Community.
Yeah.
Some other stuff, but it was kind of like the year of Betty White, if you will.
Right. Everyone was all about Betty White. She's great, but
yeah, not trying to take anything away from her, but she had a big uptick during this time.
Yeah. So we have a few more entries in this, and we'll run through them really quickly. First up is a pair of movies that's the classic. Like, we may eventually do like a topic at some point that's twin movies, like movies that came out in the same year from different studios that tackled the same subject or the same concept or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Dante's Peak and Volcano and.
Right.
But in this example, this rom-com example of formulaic rom-coms are Friends with Benefits and No Strings Attached. I can't remember what year these two came out, but they came out the same year. Oh man. Oh, I should have looked this up. One has Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis, and the other has Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman. I believe Natalie Portman and Ashton Kutcher were in No Strings Attached, while Timberlake and Mila Kunis were in Friends with Benefits. I, for one, can't really remember. But I've seen both of them, and it's funny because when I started the blog in February of 2013, I had a list of double feature reviews I was going to do, and I always planned on doing Friends with Benefits and No Strings Attached. That's a weird sentence, but I never got around to it. But what I do remember is I preferred No Strings Attached over Friends with Benefits. I can't remember exactly why. Tiny, what'd you think of these two? Have you seen them?
I've only seen the Ashton Kutcher one.
Okay.
And I thought it was dumb.
Really?
Pretty dumb. Yeah, I didn't care for it. I don't like Ashton Kutcher, and I'm not really that big a fan of Natalie Portman either.
Really?
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember buying into their relationship a lot better than Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis.
Gotcha.
In Friends with Benefits, but yeah. And then finally we have a group of 4 movies that 2 of them I debated on having them in the formulaic thing. By the way, we've not gotten to one of my favorite movies of all time yet.
Gotcha.
For those keeping track still. But we'll start with kind of the granddaddy of this concept or this format. But Love Actually, it's a movie that takes different what's the word I'm looking for? Different storylines and intersects them, and it's almost like an anthology movie of different subplots, and then they all kind of come together at the end. It's all along the same kind of theme of love and all that. And I, for one, love. I actually love Love Actually, Tiny.
So do I.
Yeah, it's got its problems. It was recently brought up on Slash Filmcast, and Dave Chen kind of ripped it apart, with good reason, because it doesn't really hold up unless you're watching it just for the pure joy of it. It doesn't hold up if you don't have joy in your heart.
Yeah.
That's just a joke. But anyway, Love Actually is fantastic. I love it despite its faults. There's like the biggest fault of it is Andrew Lincoln's subplot with Andrew Lincoln is in love with Keira Knightley, who is married to his best friend Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yeah.
And it's the way that concludes is like so like wow, Rick Grimes, you're a despicable person. Do you remember how that ended?
I do. The thing with the poster board.
Yeah. Like, what if Chiwetel Ejiofor had answered the door, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, really? I like to imagine that he had on the opposite side, the other side of each one, like a completely different thing that would have been more applicable to their friendship. Like, hey, congratulations on being married. Congratulations on booking 12 Years a Slave. Your future, he didn't. I don't think he didn't win Best Actor, but your future Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
I'll be in Atlanta. Rick Grimes. So dumb. But anyway,
I'll be in Atlanta. Oh man, I think. What I love about the movie, I love this movie unequivocally. Mm-hmm. I think I love the fact that it showcases how love means different things to people.
Sure.
Because like there's the one dude who just wants to get laid.
Right.
He goes to Wisconsin just to get laid. Like what? And then you have the whole Rick Grimes thing where he's willing to wait or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know, whatever he says. Liam Neeson just wants to kind of. I think he wants to connect to his son in the wake of his wife's death.
Mm-hmm. That could have been its own movie.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, and there's so many different subplots to this that I loved. I like. I mean, who doesn't love jaded rock star Bill Nighy?
Yeah.
Like. It's just I don't know. That's just so. Again, here's that word, charming.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. Also, it's a holiday movie, so you got that. You got Hugh Grant as the prime minister who is attracted to his assistant, and they have this whole oh I'm so charmingly befuddled.
Yeah.
Kind of meet cute and everything, and it's fantastic to me. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I won't apologize for it.
No, I damn well won't either. However, that kind of gave rise to the different interconnected vignettes, anthology movies that came to light after that. I'm thinking more Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And both those movies I saw once with the express, like I went in primed to enjoy both of them. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, because I'm like, this is right up my alley. This is like two more Love Actuallys, and it's neither one of them really worked for me. I may need to revisit them, but they just didn't work for me. I'm trying to think of the different plot lines in each one, but I'm kind of struggling. I know Valentine's Day had your favorite actor Ashton Kutcher.
Yes, it did.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say Anne Hathaway.
Okay,
I think she was in it as a sex call operator person.
Okay.
But yeah, it's I I liked the Family Guy episode parodying Valentine's Day more than the actual movie.
Yeah. I went into both of these basically with I basically thought I can't wait to hate these. They seem so derivative of Love Actually that I just couldn't get into them at all. And they lived up to that to that premonition. So I'm not a fan of either of them. I think I watched New Year's Eve just to watch it. Is that the one with Taylor Swift and...
Yes, Taylor Swift
Tay-Tay.
Yeah, Tay-Tay. Taylor Swift and Taylor Lautner.
Yeah,
I remember
alive.
Taylor Swift played like a peppy cheerleader.
Yeah.
And it also has Zac Efron.
That's right, yeah.
I almost said friend of the show, Zac Efron. He has no connection to this podcast whatsoever.
Yeah.
He played like a male courier who forms an attraction or a friendship with I can't remember who, an older actress in the movie.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. It was all forgettable to me.
Right. It's funny that we both had very vastly different ideas going into it. Like, you were primed to hate it. I was primed to love both of them. But it wasn't...
Man, that would be a great name for a rom-com. Primed to Love.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Oh God, we should. I'm gonna keep that in mind for our next fake movie game.
Oh my God.
So, to round out the formulaic segment of this is a movie that, once again, I'm not sure if I really, by its storytelling conceit and the way it's handled alone, it kind of is forced to be in the formulaic segment. But I would argue that it would almost belong in Fresh Takes. He's just not that into you. It's another interconnected movie with different subplots and everything. But there's something about it I just really enjoyed. I mean, it's got a great cast.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper and Justin Long,
Jennifer Connelly, Scarlett Johansson.
Yep. And I'm blanking on
Kevin Connelly.
Yeah. And I'm blanking on is it the girl from not the girl from Mad Men, is it?
Elizabeth Moss?
Yeah. Is she in it?
I don't know. I
don't think she is. I think I'm mistaken.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's just so much fun. It's what I wanted out of New Year's Eve and Valentine's Day. It doesn't really reach Love Actually levels for me, but it still worked quite a bit for me. I really liked the interplay between Justin Long and the girl that I'm mistaking for what's her name again? Elizabeth Moss. I'm so sorry. Friend of the show, Elizabeth Moss. But I really liked their interplay and everything, and her storyline also was very, very resonant with me because it's she's very very much an overthinker, and yeah, I remember, or I may be mistaking her for Drew Barrymore's segment in the movie where she is replaying voicemails and stuff like that.
That's right, yeah.
And really reading way too much into anything. It was like seeing my life on screen.
You know, I just wasn't that into it.
Really? Really?
No, I thought it was better than Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve, but again, just not on the level of Love Actually.
Okay.
Like you said, I agree with that. It has its charms, but I like the fact that it's based on a book.
Right.
The book, I think, is probably a fun read or whatever. But yeah, it does have its moments.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked the deconstruction of the dating life in the movie, and I've mentioned that a lot of these movies are good background movies and stuff like that. This is a movie that I've watched several times just playing it in the background, and that's both to its credit and also a little bit to its detriment, because I don't do that with Love Actually, because I get wrapped into Love Actually whenever I have it playing in the background. So also the director of He's Just Not That Into You is Ken Kwapis, who I recognize the name from The Office. He directed 13 episodes of The Office. Yeah, so go Ken Kwapis.
Nice.
Yeah, so that rounds out the formulaic category of our rom-com discussion, and we're going to end this with a Fresh Takes segment where we talk about movies that kind of buck the trends of the rom-com genre and do something unique with it. And we're running a little long, so we'll still, these are worth mentioning to more of an extent than any others, so this will be a long episode, but I'm rambling. So to start it off, Tiny, have you seen all of these? I think there's one you haven't seen.
Let's see.
For our listeners, there are 9 movies on this list. Oh, there's 2 that you haven't seen.
The last 3 I have not seen.
Okay. Ooh, you should see them. You should see 2 of them. Okay, so to start off, Chasing Amy. This is one of the few movies I was able to rewatch in time for this episode, and I swear every time I see it, I'm convinced Kevin Smith's best work.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Yeah, it's just so much more mature than anything that he'd done before that. Not to say that they were too immature or too bad. It's just I loved seeing that growth as a director from him at that point in his career. And also just the way that it's handled is just such a uniquely Kevin Smith spin on the romantic comedy, and it played perfectly by all the actors. Like, I mean, his dialogue is fantastic, and I think I want to say that it was I don't know, I can't credit what podcast it was because I'll if I get it wrong, it might be Midwest Film Nerds podcast, but someone on a podcast recently said that Kevin Smith's dialogue is like, I think they said is like the dialogue of people on internet message boards who can really craft what they want to say.
Yeah, it is.
And that's definitely, I definitely agree with that. And Chasing Amy is no different, and it works to the movie's betterment because it gets the point across, and all of the motivations of each character come across very well. And there's a couple scenes, like there's the scene in the rain between Joey Lauren Adams and Ben Affleck that's just freaking amazing.
It really is.
It's it's just such an inventive, it's kind of an inventive twist on the When Harry Met Sally trope or setup, because it's 2 friends who are a man and a woman who are friends, and one's in love with one of them, but one's a lesbian. Hilarity ensues.
Yeah,
it's such a unique twist on this brand of romantic comedy, and it's done extraordinarily well. Have you watched it lately?
I haven't watched it lately, but just sitting here thinking about it makes me want to watch it again because it's just so funny.
Absolutely,
and it's like, I don't know, it's just so incredible to watch the transformation that takes place in the movie, and the evolution of the primary relationship throughout the movie. It's just so fascinating to watch. And it has this really great coming of age aspect to it that I think is really charming. I agree. I think it's Kevin Smith's best work. It's definitely his most accessible work. I really love the movie. I think the performances are awesome, and the writing is just top notch. Like, the pacing's perfect. Like, each scene builds on the previous one just immaculately. I think it's a really well crafted movie. It
really rewatching it, which, by the way, small tangent, we talked about in our year in review episode that none of us had watched many movies in our collection, like from our DVD collection.
Yeah,
I own this movie and I still streamed it on Netflix because I didn't feel like getting up and, well, actually, it's not even so much that I didn't feel like getting the disc out and watching it on a disc, because I have the Criterion DVD of it. It's just it's so second nature to me to check something on a streaming platform that I don't even think about my collection, really.
Me too.
And it's kind of, that's a shame.
It's convenient.
Exactly.
And really, the Netflix transfer probably looks better than the DVD copy.
Maybe. Yeah, probably. But then again, it is a Criterion release in that instance. But
true.
A lot of times it's like Blu-ray quality on Netflix, and it's spectacular.
Yeah.
But watching it again this time around, man, going back to his early career, where his first 4 or 5 movies were all connected, and they all have little inside jokes to one another. There's a scene between Joey Lauren Adams and Ben Affleck where they're talking and they're just swapping stories. Like, oh yeah, you lived here, and this, and then Holden's just like, here's the ultimate test, quick stop, and then Joey Lauren Adams says, my best friend f***ed a guy in their bathroom. A dead guy in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, that is just so freaking amazing. I just love that so much.
Yeah.
And I miss that. I really miss that. And it's something that he kind of seemed to be trying to start up again or do again with the True North trilogy, having the Yoga Hoser scene in it, but it just didn't work for me because that movie just wasn't to my liking. But going back and seeing his View Askew universe, the early days of his career was just such a return. Like, I'm probably going to in the next week rewatch Clerks and Mallrats and probably not Jay and Silent Bob, and maybe Dogma. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But just those first few movies from him were just freaking amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning though that he has Mallrats in production.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But
yeah.
So moving along to our next fresh take. This is a super long episode. I love you, man.
And then also in our next, I knew you were going to do that.
Tiny, you're a huge fan of this movie.
I like it a lot. Yes.
Okay. I remember you really being excited about it when it came out in theaters.
Yes.
And like, I remember going to the theater and then leaving and like texting you and being like, "You're right, that was freaking awesome."
Yeah, I thought it was one of the better comedies I had seen in like a couple years.
Right.
When it came out, and I think I just had a part of that's knee jerk. I think I'm not trying to take anything away from it, but I think part of that was knee jerk because I had a phenomenal experience in the theater. It was opening night and it was like packed, and everyone was just laughing their ass off at it.
Nice.
So it was just a really good experience. But it is a really fun movie. I mean, it's again, it's a little spin on the genre. You know, it's kind of about the relationship between two friends. This guy's found love in a counterpart, and he needs to find like the support from a friend, and it's just a different play on it. And obviously, Paul Rudd and Jason Segel have awesome chemistry.
Oh, amazing!
I mean, just flawless chemistry. Mm-hmm. Really impressive in that respect. So, I don't know. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you're really missing out.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
I love it. And there's the John Favreau in it is freaking amazing.
Yeah,
like he plays just such an a-hole, and it's just so, his delivery of every line is freaking amazing. The poker scene is like one of the most memorable comedy scenes I've seen in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
And then moving along, this might be a point of contention on this podcast. I don't know how you feel about this movie, but kind of in a similar vein of having a genre twist where, like with I Love You Man, having two male, having a bromance and having two males be the center of it. That awkward moment takes three male stars basically, and basically spins the concept of the romantic comedy of a woman looking for love to men looking for love, mm-hmm. or having their adventures on a romantic comedy from their perspective. And I haven't seen this since I saw it for the first time, but I really, really liked it. Great cast: Miles Teller, Zac Efron, and Michael B. Jordan. Mm-hmm. Two of them went on to be members of the Fantastic Four. But I just remember just really enjoying this movie and really just eating up all the little comedy bits. And I thought the chemistry between the three leads were great. And yeah, I loved it. I loved it. Did you see it? What'd you think of it?
I did see it. Yeah, I liked it a lot too. The three storylines weaving together through their friendship was pretty. And it's again just super relatable.
Yeah, totally.
Being a guy and stuff like that. It was, yeah, very relatable.
Yeah, totally.
Good one.
So none of these have been one of my favorite movies of all time. However, and it's also worth mentioning, all of these are in no particular order.
Right.
The next one is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Like, without question. There was one year, it might be more a reflection of where I was in my personal life. I saw this freaking movie like 7 times that year.
Yeah.
It's 500 Days of Summer, and my God, I love this movie. I absolutely adore it. And it's like you said before, I'm not going to get personal on this or anything, but it's a very relatable subject. It starts out from the beginning with the kind of fresh take on it. The twist on it is that this is not a love story. It's about a guy who is lovelorn for this woman who does not feel the same way. And he doesn't seem to be capable of feeling the same way. And it's such an amazing movie from start to finish. It's a nonlinear movie, so it kind of intercuts between him dealing with the breakup and them in their heyday of their relationship. And it's just the contrast between I wish I would have found the time to rewatch it again, but the contrast between the two sequences, like there's two sequences of them in IKEA, and it's like they're at different points in their relationship, and it's just so brilliantly handled. And they're at different points in the movie, and there's one sequence in particular that is one of my favorite scenes of any movie. It's one of the greatest depictions of it's one of the most realistic depictions, really, of a feeling that people get. It's the expectations versus reality segment, where it's a split screen. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is going to a party, and the left side of the screen is his expectations for the night, and then the right side is the reality of the night. And it's all set to Regina Spektor's song "Hero," and oh my God, that scene is just unbelievably amazing. I freaking love it. And the way that the movie itself, the way that the story is handled, and the chemistry between Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel is just incredible. Like, this movie, I can't, like, it might even be one of my Desert Island movies, actually.
Wow.
So yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. 500 Days of Summer. Tiny, what did you think?
I also love it, and I don't have quite the same affinity for it as you do, but I think it's one of the best romantic comedies of all time.
Of course you don't, because you're happy.
True. That is true. That is true.
Jesus.
But yeah, I think you use the word contrast, and the movie is really about contrast and balancing between those two up low and high periods of a relationship. And it's just the movie's about balance, and it's balanced perfectly. It's like a perfectly balanced movie. It's so well done. I agree. And Zooey Deschanel has that like kind of perfect dream girl kind of thing going.
Right. She's a manic pixie dream girl.
Manic pixie dream girl. Yep. She has that going in this movie. And she's awesome. I think also women are a big fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Well, yeah.
For understandable reasons.
It's not only women. But and we talked about with Annie Hall, we talked about how the opening of a movie is very important in this genre. The opening of 500 Days of Summer is so, first of all, it's incredible. It's another Regina Spektor song, actually. I can't remember the name of it. Us, I think. I remember this because like Us and Hero are like the only two Regina Spektor songs I listen to because they're part of this movie. But it starts with just scenes of the characters as kids at different points, and then I think before that there's a black screen. It just says this movie is fictitious. It's not based on anyone in particular, and then it says something like especially you, Jenny Beckwith, you bitch, or something. It's just I love that.
That's awesome.
And it's just, oh my God, I freaking love this movie so much. It's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time.
Nice.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Is there anything else we need to say about it? Because I can write an entire like 20-page whatever.
Do it.
Time. So anyway, so next up on the list is Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which I threw in kind of at the 11th hour, because it's more of a breakup movie, and it's a romantic comedy, but it's kind of in a class by itself.
Yeah.
Jason Segel is fantastic. I love Kristen Bell, and Russell Brand before everyone kind of knew Russell Brand
exactly,
or like hated him. So like he's the perfect amount of Russell Brand in this movie. And then there's that one scene with Jonah Hill. We have Mila Kunis. It's a really great like location rom-com movie because the location of setting it in Hawaii and having that tropical atmosphere kind of lends this fish out of water story, or not even fish out of water story, just kind of like this. It heightens the awkwardness of it, like the way that I'm describing this movie right now.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's just it's fantastic, and it's something that's there's somewhat of a relatability to it, I guess, because I mean everyone's in this situation. Like I personally, on a very personal level, can relate to the scene where Jason Segel, after having been dumped by Kristen Bell, goes to Hawaii and he goes to the hotel and he sees her there, and it's like I can so relate to that feeling. Like there's a scene where he's like he's thinking like I think he asked Mila Kunis how he looks, and then she's like, yeah, I look fine or whatever, and then he just says under his breath, he's like I wish I wasn't wearing this fucking shirt. It's like yeah, I've been there, man. I know exactly how you feel.
Yep.
And then he breaks the ice by saying she's like, Peter, what are you doing here? And he's just like I came here to murder you.
I'm here to murder you.
It's like, yep, that's when I knew I loved this movie.
That's one of the best lines ever.
Absolutely.
So funny.
Oh yeah.
I think this movie also, in my book, is one of the better rom-coms of all time.
Nice.
I just love the perspective of it. It starts with a breakup and the guy is trying to get over it. Like that's really unique, and it's so personal to Jason Segel as the writer of the movie that like it's beyond relatable because it's real. Like this is how he felt. This is the stuff he went through. Mm-hmm. Like it's almost like he's not even telling a story. He's just recounting what he went through, and that gives it a level of authenticity that sets it apart.
Right.
Really, really well. And the movie's just hysterical. I love the movie. Yep.
Speaking of autobiographical romantic comedies, I'm throwing a curveball here, but I just realized it's Sleepwalk with Me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd really call it a romantic. Well, yeah, romantic comedy.
Totally,
to an extent, yeah. I love that movie too. I have a signed DVD of it signed by Mike Birbiglia and from Joey Bag of Donuts. After seeing Mike Birbiglia live. The week before my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. But I love that movie, and I'm so excited for Mike Birbiglia's next movie. So I'll throw that in there to this list. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. Also, just a huge level of authenticity that really set it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
very Woody Allen-esque, which I appreciated. Next up on the list, and then we'll kind of run through the last three after this really briefly since you haven't seen them. But Silver Linings Playbook. I haven't seen this movie since the first time I saw this movie, and the first time I saw this movie is when I first loved the movie.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough to gauge my feelings on it now, but it's a very, very well done movie. Really great performances from Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence, and then just the depiction of bipolar disorder, and I don't know how authentic it is or anything, but it sold me on the character's story, and it sold me on the chemistry between the characters very well, actually. And, so what did you think of Silver Linings Playbook?
Yeah, it's so wildly eccentric that you can't take your eyes off of it. Yeah. It's like watching a slow motion train wreck.
Right.
I think I don't want to say it's not a rom-com, but I think it's more drama. I think it's more drama with comedy interspersed throughout it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it should be taken off the list or anything.
Right.
I love the movie too. I think I've only seen it twice. Mm-hmm. But it won some Oscars, and I totally wanted it to win some of those Oscars.
Right.
I really love this movie, and it's one of the only reasons why I have the amount of respect I do for David O. Russell, because I think the sporadic nature of the characters played into his style really well in this movie, and he has yet to recapture that again, because I think he has a bit of a sporadic filmmaking tactics, and I think his other movies don't mesh well with it, but this one was perfect for it.
Yeah,
so.
and he does a lot of like character based stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of to the detriment of story at times, and it really lent itself very well to this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the last three of the fresh takes category are three movies you haven't seen.
Correct. I haven't seen any of these.
Okay, so I brought this one up as the this generation's When Harry Met Sally in an extended potpourri episode. I don't remember the number offhand, but it's the one where I talked about Indie Film Fest last year in July. So it was like probably the first episode of August of last year. But Sleeping with Other People. Jason Sudeikis and Alison Brie as two people who swapped virginities in college in a one-night stand and then meet like 10 or 12 years later in New York and have a friendship, strike up a friendship. And it's what struck me most about it, and this is all stuff that I said in that episode, but I'll just touch on them briefly, is that this movie not only takes a familiar concept or a familiar plotline of a very famous and well-regarded romantic comedy, being When Harry Met Sally, because it's very much When Harry Met Sally, but it transports it to an era or a time period where there's a lot different about being in your 20s or your late 20s and dating, and it's something that I connected to. There were several instances where things were happening to characters, or characters were involved in situations or specific to dating and relationships that either I hesitate to say I've been in, but like either I've known people who have been in similar situations. And I haven't revisited it since seeing it last July, but I've been eager to. It's available to rent on Google Play and iTunes and all that stuff. And I'm kind of curious how my feelings about it are going to hold up, because I saw it as the opening night film of Indie Film Fest, so I kind of had that atmosphere aiding my perception of it a bit. But it's stuck with me even to this day, because it's a really well done comedy. There's a couple tropey things in it, like there's. In every R-rated comedy these days, there's a scene where the characters are on drugs, because that's what R-rated comedies do these days.
Yeah.
And the ending I didn't really have a problem with, but a lot of people have a problem with it apparently, but I didn't have a problem with it at the time. So, but it kind of does go into a different direction. But I highly recommend Sleeping with Other People, and I highly recommend Sleeping with Other People, the movie. I don't know how I'm going to cut that. Anyway, it's really good. The memory of it has held up well. And then the next one is Obvious Child, which I think I've talked about on the podcast before. It's Jenny Slate's movie about a stand-up comedian. It's a romantic comedy that takes place in the, I think, 2 weeks that Jenny Slate's character has to wait before she can get an abortion.
Yeah.
And it's an abortion romantic comedy, and that's a fresh take by my book.
Definitely.
Yeah, and there's some really good character stuff between her and the male lead, who I can't remember his name, but he played one of the new interns on the last season of The Office. Yeah, so that was great. And then the final one on this list is They Came Together. You haven't seen this one?
Have not.
Man, you're gonna have to watch this.
Yeah.
It's David Wayne's romantic comedy spoof movie with Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler, and a bunch. Pretty much anyone that's worked with David Wayne before is in this movie in some capacity, and it plays on the tropes of the romantic comedy so great. It's like there's one scene in particular, and then we'll wrap this up quick. That's what she said. That's so dumb. Anyway, don't even. There's one scene in particular where Paul Rudd is hanging out with his friends, and they're playing basketball. They're just shooting hoops, and it's like each character. It's like Kenan Thompson, Ken Marino, Jack McBrayer, and I think one other person, and each one is just like a different archetype of a romantic comedy best friend character.
Okay.
And it's like in the style that they say it in, or the style that the dialogue is in, it's just like they're talking openly about it. It's like like Ken Marino shoots a basket, he misses every single one, and every single time he shoots the ball, he says swish, but he says something like, well, the meaning of love is to get laid. And then I think Kenan Thompson says something like, yeah, you shouldn't listen to, and then he basically breaks down that trope, and by saying, I can't remember exactly what he says, but it says something like the late bloomer or late 30s or early 30s guy who's only obsessed with getting laid and all that. And then it goes through each character's advice to him, and they sum it up by saying that. And then, I think Jack McBrayer says something like, so take all of these together and then form your own opinion. It's just the way that it's written is much better than I'm doing it justice, but it's just that biting satire of the genre is something that I loved, and I've seen it several times. I think it was my honorable mention on my honorable mentions list for 2014. But it's a great movie. It's a great movie. They came together.
Nice.
And and that about does it for the list. But I do want to give a quick mention to Fourth Man Out, which is somewhat of a romantic comedy. I saw it at Heartland Film Festival last year, and it's available to rent on iTunes and Google Play and all that stuff now. It's a really good coming of age movie, romantic comedy movie about a guy who on his 24th birthday comes out to his friends who are like super I use the word bromophobic, where they use a lot of gay slurs and just they kind of like, oh, you're so gay, like kind of like broing out. And it's about them dealing with the political correctness or how to handle being friends with a gay person, not in a disrespectful or homophobic way, but more of in a post PC age or something like that.
Gotcha. And
there's the rom-com thing. The reason why I'm bringing it up here is that there's a great like underlying storyline or there's a great plot line involving the main character discovering like this is the first time that he's openly dating as a gay man, and there's some growing pains. He goes on a string of really horrible first dates, and like it's stuff that's universal for any gender preference person or no matter your sexual preference. Like these are relatable scenarios. Like I've been in that situation before with women that I've dated for several times in those examples, and it's something that I just really appreciated. I love it. It's called Fourth Man Out. That's fourth with 4th, like the number 4.
Numerical, right?
That's yep. So that's our discussion of romantic comedies. I have a few that were under debatable, but we don't need to really touch on them. I want to throw this out though. Where would you think Trainwreck would fit there? Because we both saw it, and didn't we? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a fresh take. But it's not as good as the ones on our fresh take list.
I agree.
That's the problem. Because I mean, it is the fresh take in that the female lead is more like the traditional male character,
right?
So that's what's different about it, and why I think it's kind of a fresh take. And
also the trope of the best friend for the male character is a parody of that trope. Basically,
right,
it's LeBron James playing LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great that way, but it's. I don't know. It follows such a romantic comedy formula that I was debating whether or not to put it under fresh takes or formulaic. But this is not an official list in any capacity. So that's our list. That's our discussion of the rom-com genre. There are so many movies, so many tropes, so many everything to mine from this. We're going to revisit it at some point in the future. Watch out next year for Valentine's Day. We're going to do teen rom-coms. That's on the books now. I have it written down.
Oh my god.
Can't wait. So then that's our discussion of romantic comedies, and then now we're going to go to our potpourri section. And yes, so for first-time listeners of the podcast, Potpourri is the section of the podcast where we talk about anything that we're watching, anything that we've watched lately, looking forward to, anything like that. The phrase we use is it's whatever we want as long as it smells good. And to kick it off, I have 3 things. Tiny, you have 2?
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off here. Last week on the podcast on OV152 on our Revenant episode, reviewing The Revenant, it was assigned to me to watch Hannibal season 1 on Amazon Prime, and then also The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, so that will be next week that I'll talk about it in Potpourri. But I have gone through about 10 episodes of Hannibal season 1, and holy crap, that show. Okay, Tiny, what is your relationship to Hannibal Hannibal, the TV show?
It's non-existent.
Okay.
I've never watched. I don't think I've watched the trailers or promos for it.
Interesting.
I just didn't want to get into it.
Okay, so Hannibal is basically the story of Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham from the Red Dragon novel and the movie Manhunter and the Red Dragon movie. It's about them working together with the FBI before, Hannibal Lecter was, incarcerated and all that stuff. And it's so, holy crap. I talked about it in a Potpourri segment back in, October or November, because I'd watched the pilot. And having gone through 10 episodes now of this season, it doesn't let up. It's astonishing to me that there is so much violence and so much gore in it, because there's a lot of scenes of crime scenes and it's like blood everywhere. There's one plot line where they're chasing a killer who, oh man, it's so messed up, who his victims are their backs are sliced open and the skin flaps of their back are brought up to make them look like angels.
Wow.
And their dead bodies are posed in a prayer stance. It's so graphic and crazy. Yeah. And the performances are just astounding. Mads Mikkelsen plays Hannibal Lecter, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Hannibal Lecter is one of the iconic characters of film, really, of the one of the most iconic villain characters in all of movies, basically. And Mads Mikkelsen plays him in such a the way that he performs it is just really gripping and very terrifying, and it's kind of a subtle way, because you know the character, you know who he is, what he is. No one else really does, though, and there are moments where he does things that are just so crazy. There's a moment in the pilot where they're going to get they've been chasing a killer, basically, and they find out where he lives and everything, and then they go to the car and everything, but Hannibal stays behind, and he calls the guy on the phone, and then from the office that they're in, and calls him, and all he says is they know, and then that launches a whole thing. And the thing that I kind of really appreciated about Hannibal season 1, though, is that it's a fairly serialized show. It's I kind of had this perception going in, since it's a network show, it aired on NBC, that it would be kind of a case of the week, Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham, what adventures are they going to have this week? And to an extent, there is kind of a case of the week thing, but there's a serialized format to it. There's characters that recur and dynamics that are grown throughout different episodes, and there's a through line to it, and I really appreciated that. And having said that, there's also, first of all, Hugh Dancy plays Will Graham, and he plays this kind of, he's Will Graham, who he's very empathetic to serial killers, basically. He can imagine what's going through a psychopath's mind when they're committing a murder, and it's very emotionally draining to him, because he experiences what the killer experiences. And there's some really great sequences where he's basically there's kind of a wipe effect that goes on the screen, where he'll be looking at a scene, and then the screen will wipe, and then he'll be in the scene before the murder, and it'll show him doing the murder, and he'll have this kind of almost Shakespearean monologue to himself, saying I take the knife and I slit the throat, and I carve out the organs. And then it's chilling, because as he's describing it just to himself and to the audience, it's kind of his inner monologue when he's doing it, because it's a kind of a fantasy sequence, basically. He repeats the line, he says, "This is my design. This Is My Design every time, and it's chilling. It's amazing. And then my final thought for it, or my second to last final thought, is Lawrence Fishburne plays Jack Crawford, who he was played by Scott Glenn in Silence of the Lambs. He's kind of the head of the FBI character guy. Anyway, and there's a he does a great job and everything, but there's one scene in particular that like kind of blew my mind a little bit. I can't really give anything away. He has a wife played by Gina Torres who has been distant to him and has been acting kind of strange. And then there's a moment where Will Graham is talking to a woman, or talking to the wife of someone that they're after, and they find out something about the character. And there is a moment where Lawrence Fishburne's character just kind of like has this dawning realization about the truth of what's going on with his wife, and it's like the scene is incredible because Will Graham is having a dialogue with this woman, and then the whole time like you're just transfixed by Lawrence Fishburne, who's having this earth shattering realization that's just really, really well done. So I'm so all about Hannibal right now. I've watched 10 episodes. I'll probably watch season 2 after it, and then I don't know where I'll be able to find season 3, but I might actually buy it somewhere and watch it. But the kind of, to my parting thought on this, and I apologize for being so long-winded, but it's really a credit to the show that I am so disappointed that it's gotten canceled, because I would absolutely love to see this cast, this world, explore the storyline of Silence of the Lambs and even Hannibal. Like, kind of go through that. And I guess season 3 does delve into the Red Dragon arc of the Hannibal story. So I do have that to look forward to, but to see it get cut, like it's so amazing to me that Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs is an iconic performance, and I want to see that acted by Mads Mikkelsen. I think that that's a great compliment to give this cast, this creative team, and Mads Mikkelsen in particular. So that's Hannibal season 1, 10 episodes I've seen. It's on Amazon Prime. Check it out. This Is My Design.
Awesome.
Are you going to watch it?
I'd like to at some point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's Hannibal season 1. Tiny, what do you have for us?
My first one is a documentary I recently watched called The Propaganda Game. It was filmed in 2014 by a Spanish director named Alvaro Longoria. Basically, he was granted a quote-unquote all-access tour of North Korea, which is a very difficult thing because, you know, that's a highly secretive, closed off communist country.
Right.
You can't just go to North Korea. Like you have to get permission from their government, and it's a really tricky thing to do, especially if you have a camera.
Right.
And so this guy was guided through Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, for I think a little over a week. And was taken to the demilitarized zone, and he got to tour some of the famous landmarks in Pyongyang, and he got to interview anyone he wanted to. It was just a really fascinating all access kind of, again in quotations, all access kind of documentary. I really appreciated it for its objectivity, though. One of the things that was pointed out very well in the documentary is that because there's so little information that we actually get about what it's like to be in North Korea, that basically means that anything that anyone says is potentially true. And so there are all these crazy factoids we get, or pieces of information we get from North Korea, like the men are only allowed to have one haircut, and it's the same haircut that Kim Jong-un has.
Jeez.
You know what I mean? And like it could be true. No one really
Right.
knows, you know what I mean? But, you know, you go there and the guy's filming and he's like, there's actually people who have tons of different kinds of haircuts here, so that's ridiculous. There was the story that the number 2 guy in the North Korean government was executed by basically tossing him to a pack of dogs. Turns out to be hugely untrue. Like news companies, news organizations around the world reported it as fact, but it was actually false. Wow. So it's kind of it was refreshingly objective in that respect, in that he's like, you know, there's all these reports of all this terrible stuff going on, but we don't actually know if it's true. Mm-hmm. And there's some stuff that is true. It's very disturbing. It's you know, it's not a free society by any stretch of the imagination. It's a communistic country. It's ruled by a dictator. It's actually really funny. The country of North Korea, their leader is actually dead. Wow. The first one, Kim Il-sung, I think, was the first dictator. He's technically the leader of North Korea. His grandson, Kim Jong-un, I believe, who is the current dictator or whatever of North Korea, is just a placeholder for his grandfather, basically.
Wow.
It's kind of a weird factoid. It's like that just kind of demonstrates how screwy it is over there. But this documentary was cool. I really appreciated again the objectivity of it, and the fact that it's really about. It's not about how weird North Korea is. Mm-hmm. It's about how they use propaganda to shape their perception amongst their own populace, which is really interesting because, I mean, everyone in North Korea is brainwashed without question. Mm-hmm. Like, they absolutely are. It's just a question of how do they know how brainwashed they are?
Right. And
do they really want to have freedom of speech and have free elections? And do they really want to be free, or do they appreciate the system that they currently live in? It's an interesting exploration of society in North Korea. I appreciated the objectivity of it in that respect. Mm-hmm. It's cool how they got in there too. There's this guy. He's the only foreigner who works for the North Korean government. Huh. He's a Spanish guy. He was born in Spain and just basically immigrated to North Korea because he wanted to be part of a communist society. And he's like one of their best PR people because he's a foreigner who chose to adopt their way of life as opposed to being forced into it, if you will. Okay. So he was a really interesting person to explore and to look at. He's a fascinating guy. They could have made just a documentary about him. So that was kind of their into the country, and I'm glad he's there because it was a very, very fascinating thing. That country is just amazing. Their precision and their attitude, and it's crazy because every single scene, every single like landscape or establishing shot, everything is spotless.
Really?
There's no trash on the ground. There's no homeless people. There's nothing broken. There's no leaves on the ground. The grass is cut to a perfect level. Everything is precisely perfect. Mm-hmm. It's just a really... And, you know, some people theorize, oh, it's just a show. They knew there was a camera coming, so they right. staged everything. That's kind of a common theory. It could be true. It might not be. Who knows? But it was a fascinating thing to watch. I'll put it that way. It's about an hour and a half. It's on Netflix. I recommend it.
And that's called The Propaganda Game?
The Propaganda Game.
How does it stack up to the interview?
They actually mention it. And
really?
They actually mention it in the movie. It's kind of funny. And, you know, the people, they mention it, and the Spanish guy, I forget his name, he has an interesting point. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with it, but, you know, he has the point that the reason why they boycotted it so hard and saw it as as like an act of terrorism in their eyes, is that, you know, they were depicting a living, active leader of a country, and... you know, the things that happened to him in the movie would be an act of war. And it's like, that's why it's satire that doesn't translate, is because it's a living, acting leader of a country. I can understand his perspective. I think it's silly. Right. Because freedom of speech is not something that should be, you know, hamstrung. Right. At least not in my book. But I can understand where he's coming from. I'll put it that way.
That sounds. I may actually check that out.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I may actually may actually watch something that you recommend. I'm so sorry. So my next potpourri is this will be brief. The Coen brothers' latest movie, Hail Caesar.
Nice.
Yeah. So the last couple years I've had kind of a standing tradition. This is gonna sound so lame. Super Bowl Sunday. Since I'm not really into the sports balls, I will go to the movie theater because everyone's watching the big game, and I'll go see a movie. I went a little bit earlier in the day than I should have, so there was a fairly busy theater, relatively busy for Super Bowl Sunday. But and I don't know, okay, so the movie is about Josh Brolin plays a Hollywood or a movie studio fixer in 1950s Hollywood, and it's all about him dealing with a bunch of different characters throughout a day in Hollywood, fixing different problems here and there. And I thought that it was a good depiction of old Hollywood, or a good send up of old Hollywood in that respect. It was fun to watch and fun to see all of these different vignettes of the era. Like, there's a really great very long song and dance sequence with Channing Tatum, as you will see in the previews for it. He plays a Navy. It's a bunch of seamen singing and dancing, and it's like the content of it gets progressively more and more homoerotic, and it's like it's one of the best parts of the movie for my taste. But for some reason, the comedy kind of fell flat for me. It kind of juggled a lot of different things, and there's some critiques against the movie where they have a lot of really great actors and actresses making just basically on screen for 2 minutes at a time, and that's it. But I didn't mind that because it just showed kind of a slice of life kind of thing, and then it might be the kind of movie that you need to go back and see again. Because I didn't go in expecting that. I thought that it was going to be kind of a crime caper kind of thing, because the trailers really emphasized George Clooney's character being kidnapped, and I kind of thought that would be kind of the through line for it. It's really not that big of a thing. The kind of big through line for it is Josh Brolin's character dealing with a decision that he has to make about his personal life. And it's good in that respect, but something about it just didn't really stick with me. The comedy sequences in it didn't really land for me. There's a really good, I can't remember his name. There's a really good character. He plays a kind of a kind of rodeo clown guy that they kind of plucked from the rodeo to be an actor, and they I can't remember. He's kind of the standout breakout performance of the movie. It's Alden Ehrenreich, and he's fantastic in it. He is absolutely fantastic. But again, the content the comedy didn't really land for me, and that was kind of a big gap for me. And
gotcha.
I don't know. So I thought that it was okay. And I liked the time period that it was depicting and the kind of way that it was sending up that era. But I don't know. It was just okay.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yep. So what's your last potpourri segment?
My last potpourri is another documentary. I swear I don't plan this. It just happens. Trophy Kids. It came out in 2013. It was directed by Chris Bell, who is most famous for his documentary from a few years ago called Bigger, Stronger, Faster. So I was interested in it for that reason, and also I think it's an interesting subject. Mm-hmm. It's just about overbearing parents in sports. It's the classic dad/coach who doesn't know how to, separate the two things. It kind of begs the question, do these parents want what's best for their children, or do they just want them to be the best, despite whether or not it's good for them? It's an interesting question, and it explores three sets of parent and child athletes, if you will, and they're kind of varying degrees. It's really remarkable how much time and money people will spend on their children's athletic futures, regardless of how talented they are. Because there's one kid who specializes in basketball. He plays in Southern California in high school, and he's a good basketball player, but his dad thinks he's good enough to go to like a Division I school like Georgetown or IU or something like that. But he's really not. He's just not good enough to be that. But his dad pours tens of thousands of dollars into his training over his high school career, and he ends up getting a scholarship to a college, but it's like I think it's like a Division II college or something. It's great because he's a good basketball player, but he's never going to be great at it. And that's just an interesting dynamic to watch. Because all of us I think most of the audience can see the writing on the wall, but his dad is just convinced that he's the next John Stockton or whatever. It's an interesting thing to watch. It wasn't a really great documentary. I mentioned Bigger, Stronger, Faster. That is a fantastic documentary. I don't know if it's on Netflix. I think it used to be. That is a really, really good documentary. And I think what makes that so good is the fact that it's personal to Chris Bell. It's literally about himself and his family. So that's why it's so personal. He intertwines himself into the story and the thesis he's trying to state. The question he's trying to answer is so personal to him that it makes it a great documentary. Whereas this, he's really not even in it. He doesn't insert himself into it. It's not about his family. I think maybe he can relate to it a little bit, but I don't know. It lacked that personability and that passion that was in Bigger, Stronger, Faster. That's a far better documentary if you can find it somewhere.
It is on Netflix.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. That's a fantastic documentary.
Nice.
But yeah, this was just kind of lacking. I think it was a little inconclusive. I don't think it really answered the big question. It was a little too ambiguous in that respect. And like I said, it just lacked some personality, but still kind of an interesting thing to watch. I did appreciate some of the characters, if you will. They were fascinating people to watch, so it was okay.
Cool. That is Trophy Kids, which I saw I saw your check-in of it on Letterboxd, and I was really excited to hear your thoughts on it because it's been on my queue for a while. So yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
To round out Potpourri, for me, I also watched The Finest Hours, which I don't really need anything to don't really need to go into any depth about it, but it's basically about it stars Chris Pine and a bunch of different actors, bunch of different accents. But it's basically about the most daring rescue in Coast Guard history. And it's about basically an oil tanker in 1952, I think, was split in half by a storm in the winter. And it's basically about the rescue effort for it. And it's a really thrilling movie. I thought that the level to which they depicted the actual rescue mission, like it's four guys on a small little like very small ship or boat that they have to go through like incredible circumstances just to get to the ship to rescue him, and like the stakes of it were established really, really well, or fairly well. But everything else about it just fell really flat, and it's a shame because so many of the actors in it are like really good actors. Eric Bana's in this movie. Michael Raymond James is in this movie. Casey Affleck, several other people, and probably the biggest issue that I have with it is that it is a Disney-fied account of the story. It's very much a Disney. It seems very Disney in its depiction of it. That's the best way I can describe it. There's a concentrated effort, or there's an emphasis put on the relationship between Chris Pine's character and his fiancée or wife in the movie, and I will say this from the beginning, they did a really great job of establishing it. I really bought into the relationship, but there's this subplot about how Chris Pine's character had a failed rescue mission in his past that people had died from, and so he kind of has that kind of hanging over his head as he's going out to save these people on this tanker. And I just came away from the movie thinking, man, if they had just omitted the relationship stuff and opened the movie with a depiction of him failing in his rescue mission, had a different studio other than Disney who would do a more harrowing and authentic would be the word I would use, account of it, instead of just having this very, Disney-fied depiction of it. And they had his arc throughout it, Chris Pine's arc throughout it, be about how he overcame the torment of his past mistakes, or how if they gave him a more redemptive arc rather than him going home to see his sweetheart, kind of thing. I think that they could have been a really well done movie. Unfortunately, it's a Disney product that's just very much a just kind of forgettable adventure rescue movie.
That's a shame. I don't think I've even heard of that.
Yeah, there were some trailers. It's a January movie. It's just okay. I mean, I don't know. It's it's not that good. It's really not that good.
Fair enough.
So that's The Finest Hours. It's in theaters and everything. And before we go, I want to mention that next week on the podcast we're going to be reviewing Deadpool.
Yes, we are.
I'm excited for that. And then also, hopefully, we're going to have a bonus episode devoted to season 1 of The Expanse coming out. And then also, we're going to do our Oscar nominee showcase episode. I meant to mention it at the top of the episode, but I didn't. I'm really looking forward to it this year.
Nice.
Every year we do this where we have other podcasts submit clips of discussing a specific category, and we basically do a nominee rundown with about a dozen other podcasts, and we've gotten some really great submissions so far, and we have a really great lineup. So I'm really looking forward to it. So far we have clips from Sci-Fi on Screen and The Nerds You're Looking For and Cinerealists, and all three of them are just I'm super excited for the rest of them, and I'm really excited for this year's nominee showcase episode.
Sweet.
Yep. So that about does it for the Obsessive Viewer for this week. To end this episode, we're going to have Tiny pick out of the bag for me to watch something, despite me already having homework to do to watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But I'm going to double up and watch something from the bag that you just picked. What did you pick, and what number did you pick from it?
I picked Hulu, 121 to 150. I am going to go with 129, because we're currently 129 minutes into this recording.
I love it. All right, I'm going to count. So, number 129 is John Ford's Stagecoach from 1939.
Wow.
So that'll be a nice pairing for Good, the Bad, and the Ugly next week.
Couple classics.
Yeah. The description, according to Hulu, it's part of the Criterion Collection, which is a great reason to have Hulu, really, because it has the pretty much most of, if not all of, the Criterion Collection available. Stagecoach revolutionized the Western, elevating it from B-movie to the A-list and establishing the genre as we know it today, with its quintessential tale of a group of strangers thrown together into extraordinary circumstances. I'm looking forward to checking that out.
That's awesome.
All right, so that's it for us. Join us next week for our review of Deadpool and my thoughts on The Good, Bad, and the Ugly in Stagecoach. Any parting words, Tiny?
Be excellent to each other.
And I'm just a boy who's standing in front of another boy with a podcast.
Ugh.
Hoping that you'll end the podcast with me.
Took it too far.
I did. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
This is the... Wait, hang on. How do I start it usually?
Welcome to the Obsessive.
Welcome. There we go. Welcome to the Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV.
Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.
My God, that's Matt Damon.